Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. If you wouldn't mind doing so, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. It's on 30 some odd channels and obviously the Biggie's Apple. So if that's your thing, go ahead and please do that. And while you're out there, please visit the globalinvestoragent.com website. If you're an investor, this is where you're going to find agents who are not typical agents. They're trained to work with you and I to know how to identify, analyze, negotiate on and off market deals. So these are very unique, highly trained individual agents, okay? In 36 states, by the way. So we probably got you covered. And if you are an agent, man, I'm sure you're paying attention to the market. This is the time to figure this out and learn how to do this, because it's the investors that are going to help you survive this downturn, get through it, and also make money yourselves. So don't be shy. Click on the Learn More button, and you can meet some of the other investor agents around the country. So good thing to do. Hey, we've got a great guest today, Timothy Lyons, all the way from the Big Apple, New York City. And Tim, we're glad to have you on board, man. Thanks for taking your time to do this. You got an awesome subject we're going to go over here in a minute,
Gary, thank you so much for having me, and hopefully I can add some value to your listeners.
I appreciate that. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, you've got quite an interesting story. Would you mind just kind of filling people in a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you got to where you are now,
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, if someone sat me down, 4 years ago and said, Tim, this is where you're going to be today, I would have, said, listen, I need to check you into the local mental hospital, because I never thought I'd be where I am today. But I'm 40, I'm married, I got 3 little girls, 12, 9, and 4. And I'm a New York City firefighter. I'm a lieutenant now, been doing it 18 years, work in the borough of Queens. I grew up on Long Island, and I was part of the crowd, right? Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, really even a city job, right? Because they have pensions and they have, 401ks, and they, get paid every 2 weeks, and they got benefits, right? Mm-hmm. That was kind of how I grew up, right? Didn't grow up with a lot of means, very, very, very modest kind of upbringing, being my 2 brothers. And so money was always something that we didn't really talk about. But if we did talk about it, Gary, it probably wasn't a good thing. So that was like my money mindset, right?
Yeah.
Ended up going to Providence College. And while I was up there, 9/11 happened. And my uncle was a captain in the New York City Fire Department. And he was actually on the front page of the papers one
Wow.
day right after. I think it was on the 12th of the 13th, as the last firefighter pulled out alive from the World Trade Center.
Holy smokes.
And, I had been obsessed with fire trucks my whole life. Had a police scanner from Santa Claus when I was like 9 years old. I used to race around town on my bike, chasing the fire engines. Could never really shake it. So I decided right then and there that I was going to go from pre-med to being a firefighter. And I was all in sophomore year of college. And that's what I did. I graduated, May 15th of 2005. And by May 31st, I'm in the academy. Got to the firehouse in September of that year. And everybody had a second job. Everybody, second and third jobs. And the guys with the nice cars and the wives that didn't work were all nurses in the emergency rooms throughout the city. Wow. So I was pre-med back in the day, right? And I said, yeah, I'll go back to nursing school. And I got my nurse's degree, and I worked on the side and at a level 1 trauma center in the ER. Mm-hmm. And it was great, Gary. I had 2 great jobs. Every day was not the same. A lot of adrenaline, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. But during that period, I had a bunch of kids. And when they were small and my wife stayed home, life was good. Bills got paid, 2 vacations a year. But then I really realized that people were hurting in my family. My wife missed me. My kids, when they could talk, were like, dude, you just got home last night, Daddy, and then you left for another 24 hours, and I haven't seen you in a couple of days. And my wife started feeling it. I started feeling it. So I started to do my education, my due diligence, and I realized that I needed equity to build wealth. Saving my way to wealth wasn't working. The ways that my parents and my older mentors were teaching me weren't exactly working the way that I needed them to work. Mm-hmm. So I was going to buy a business, or I was going to get into real estate. Ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad on a family vacation in one day. And I said, this is it. Real estate's going to be my game. So got into real estate, started 2 months after that. I read that book in September of 21. I bought a 3-family property, self-managed it. And I'm going to stop there because that was a lot of information. And I'll see if you want to unpack any of that.
That's awesome. And you mentioned one of the great books of all time, Think and Grow Rich. And I'm sorry, that's the first one. The second one was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And what's interesting for everybody listening here, if you have not read those books, audible or written version, pull over and write this down. First one should be Think and Grow Rich. Absolutely. It's other than the Bible, it's the second greatest, most selling book in the history of the human race. Okay. Think and Grow Rich. And not far behind that is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was blessed enough to be able to meet Robert Kiyosaki in person at an event in Lake Tahoe one year, and got to have dinner with him, shake his hand, the whole 9 yards, and read all the books, every book he's ever written, and all the people that he's co-written or provided a foreword for on those books. I've read all those books, taken his training programs. I'm telling you, it's if you want to. I was in banking for 18 years. You'd think I knew about money, and I learned about money from the banking perspective. But it wasn't until I started following Robert Kiyosaki and applying his principles that I learned money from the investor perspective, the consumer perspective. Okay, and then so in any case, I appreciate you mentioning that, Tim. So here we are. Fast forward. First off, thank you for doing what you do, and I know you get that a lot, but I mean that sincerely. I mean, my family, 5 brothers and sisters, 3 are nurses. And I mean the stories they tell from being on the front line in emergency room, a nurse in emergency room, to surgical nurse, to just being played on floor duty, private practice. I mean, you guys, they can't pay you enough, but the reality is there's the other part of our life story, which is, we got to have one on today. So having your career, having your vocation, that's today's money. But you got to have one eye on tomorrow. And that usually comes from your own investing or partnering with other people some way, shape, or form on investing and applying Robert Kiyosaki's principles. So let's jump in on that. You got into real estate just like I did. I was in banking. I'm like, man, I can't keep doing this forever. So I started buying the multifamilies. And I built my foundation upon which I launched other things like other businesses. But let's go back to where you were kind of transitioning from the traditional world, nursing, firefighter, into what I would consider the unconventional world of real estate investing, and pick it up from there. Tell us about maybe your first deal, and then we can talk about the raising capital later, because I know that's kind of a big thing, particularly in today's market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I would highly concur, by the way. Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad. You follow up Rich Dad Poor Dad with the cash flow quadrant, and then follow that one up by tax-free wealth by Tom Wheelwright, one of Robert's very good friends and personal accountant. And that'll provide such a framework from which you can now view the world as a investor. And once you do that, I unlocked just a ton of knowledge. So I got into a 3-family property, and I did it with a friend because I was scared, right? I never did this before, and I'm not particularly handy. I'm like the only New York City firefighter that literally can't hang a picture on his own wall because I'm just not handy, right? My parents weren't handy, and I'm not. I'm a spreadsheet guy. So I bought it with a friend of mine. We bought it for $276, and it was 3 units, and one of them was going to be vacating upon sale, and we had to renovate it, and we did all the work ourselves, me and my friend Craig, and neither of us are particularly handy, but with a lot of YouTube hours, laying the LVP flooring and the painting, I'm sure I missed a few corners there, Gary, but looked nice, and we started cash flowing, and I was cash flowing, I don't know, $600-700 a month. Nice. And I'm like, wow, I'm like this, and that was each, by the way. And we're like, wow, this kind of works, and then we did better on our taxes. My wife started to be like, wow, this is kind of cool. Cash flow every month, better on our taxes. We feel good that we're investing in real estate. And the problem was I was still a firefighter. I was still a dad of 3 girls. I was still a husband. I was still putting 12 hours a day into, my side job at the ER. And my wife's like, I thought this was going to be more passive. Like, didn't you tell me this is going to be like a passive income opportunity, And, but it wasn't, but I wanted the experience of the landlord. So I did it for 2 years and, ended up selling, doubling my money. It was a great experience. But in the process, I really went down the education rabbit hole. Books on Audible. My local library has a Audible program for 10 free downloads a month.
Cool.
Podcasts, and then reading, just reading, everything I get my hands on. And what I realized was I was hearing a lot of regular folks getting into bigger deals, multifamily, right? 5 or more units. And, but it was a different game, right? The 1 to 4 unit game, traditional residential mortgages kind of service those types of units. But commercial mortgages are on the 5+. And it sounded hard. It sounded, out of my league, right? That's like a private equity Wall Street, wear a suit to work kind of thing. And, but then I started hearing podcasts with everyday people doing it. And I said, wait a minute, if they can do it, I can do it. So I ended up getting mentored by 2 New Yorkers that had been successful investing out of state. Again, something I thought was impossible, right? Because as a New Yorker, Gary, you're guilty till proven innocent and skeptical about everything. And I want to be able to touch it and control it. And, once I realized that real estate investing is a team sport and you have to invest where the, you make your money or you live wherever you want to live, but you have to invest where the numbers make sense. Once I unlocked those 2 things, I said, wow, like this is incredible. So what I ended up doing is I partnered with my mentor on a 43 unit property in York, Pennsylvania in August of 2020. So we're 6 months about into COVID, right? There's fear in the streets. I mean, the stock market is oscillating and, here I am, and I'm partnering on a 43 unit property in York, Pennsylvania, someplace I'd never been to. And we're going through the process, and it was going to be a syndication, right? So we were bringing it to investors. And he said, later on in the process, he said, Tim, do you want to give raising capital a shot? And I said, well, Chris, I said, don't count on me, bro. Like, I don't know if I can raise $5 or $5 million, right?
Right.
And I had a Yahoo mail address, and whoever I thought had money, Gary, got an email from me. Hey, we're putting on a webinar. If you're interested in real estate, you want to see what I'm up to. This is, and I ended up raising $150,000.
Nice.
And I said, wow. I said, there's a market for this. And I had a whole bunch of people tell me, Tim, I love what you're doing, man. This is great. But I'm not doing your first deal. Come back to me when you have a couple of deals under your belt, and I'd be happy to invest. So I created a business. So Gary, I knew that I needed equity to build wealth. I chose real estate, but then real estate chose me, right? And then I started the business. Ended up getting my securities licenses, my Series 82, my Series 63, and I work with a broker dealer now that only focuses on commercial real estate investing. Okay. So broker dealers sound scary, right? But it's, Fidelity, Vanguard, Goldman Sachs, they're all broker dealers, right? But they work with stocks, bonds, ETFs, and stuff, traditional Wall Street type of vehicles. My broker dealer does multifamily, self-storage, and industrial flex space. And that's across the United States. So I'll hit pause here and see if you want to unpack any of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like where you're going with this enough. It's interesting, kind of, perfect timing for me, and almost parallels my life. I started off, corporate, same thing, went to college, got the job. Everything was going great by conventional standards, but I was never really a natural born conformist. I just did not like being stuck in an office all day. I was just not born to be sitting behind a desk, like that. So real estate investing is what bought me my freedom. But now where I am it's sort of like been there, done that, or got the T-shirt. And what I mean is, I don't regret or bemoan anything I've ever done when I came into real estate. It got me where I am. It bought me my freedom. Essentially, made me a free man. I never forget the day I walked out of the office at 40 years old, saying I'm retiring. They're like, "You're too young to retire." And I said, "Well, call it whatever you want. I don't have to work here anymore." It works. It works. But here I am now, 20 years later again, and I don't want to have that direct ownership. I don't want to be involved with the day-to-day operations and direct communication with all the vendors and the tenants and everybody involved with that. But I do want to participate because I know how profitable it is. So where we're heading to now is where it kind of makes sense. So, there's things you can do in this business to make money that don't require you necessarily flat directly own a property where you're directly responsible for it. You can participate like with guys like you, Tim. So when it comes to that example you gave, how you got started, you raised 150 just by talking to family and friends. It's amazing. So now, hopefully I'll be considered one of your family and friends and I can participate too. And the other part of it is this, it's like you evolve and you graduate from what most people start off with, which is flipping and duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, getting into things like self-storage, office space, retail, industrial, you do land. I mean, and big multifamily too. I mean, let's face it, there is a huge shortage of housing in the United States, particularly affordable housing. And I'm starting to see now at the state level, some grants and some tax incentive programs for people like us to provide affordable housing. And I'm excited. We have a mastermind we created just for affordable housing for other investors. But back to the show. Take us from there where like now you're getting in these bigger projects. And if I'm a dentist and I'm 55 years old or 60, I've got maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 practices, and maybe I have a couple of small properties, but I'm still thinking, you know what? I like the cash flow I have now, but I don't want to work forever. I don't want to be quote unquote stuck behind a chair. Take me from there. If I hear your podcast and reach out to you, what does that look like? What's the process for working with you and the vetting, all that kind of stuff,
We'll be right back with the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast after I invite you to Monday Night Live. Every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, I teach a class without fail for you on subjects ranging from flipping to buying rentals, managing rentals, wholesaling, commercial, creative purchasing techniques, analyzing properties, identifying properties, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of subjects. And if you are a licensee, if you have a real estate license, you should definitely tap in because there are a lot of investor agents also in the class. Many of them are on the global investor agent team. So you can learn from them as well as from me how to actually work with investors correctly and profitably. All right, we'll see you Monday night. The link is in the show notes. Go ahead and register. We'll get right to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Yeah. So no, thank you for that question. It's something I get every day, right? So, I mean, there's a ton of people that are starting to understand. Whether you're a dentist, whether you're a Wharton MBA, whether you're on the factory assembly line, that trading your time for money simply has its limits. And if you've been fortunate enough to accumulate some wealth in dollars, and you have 6, 7, 800,000 in the bank, right? And maybe they're in CDs or savings accounts or whatever. But you don't have the time to understand, how do I become a real estate investor? I don't have the time. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to get the proverbial 2 a.m. phone call for the overflowing toilet, right? It keeps a lot of people on the sideline, or they know somebody, Gary, that got hurt in real estate 25 years ago, right? They did a fix and flip, it went south or whatever it is. So now to them, real estate is ruined as an asset class. So I've made it my kind of purpose in life to just let people know, let folks know what's available to them outside of the Wall Street type of investing cycle. So, so what we do is we buy big institutional quality, 200, 300, 400 unit multifamily communities. From pension funds, from REITs, from life insurance companies, from mom and pop owners. Basically it's called a value add, right? So if you have say a 2008 built multifamily 200 unit property, say in Texas, that might have black stoves and black refrigerators, which nothing wrong with them, right? They still work. But they look a little dated, right? So, and they have maybe wood cabinetry that's from, that period. We'll go in there and we'll put the stainless steel package and the gray luxury vinyl plank flooring and the LED lighting packages and, the new outlets that have USB and USB-C ports, right? And, fresh bathroom. And, now instead of getting market rent, you're getting market plus a premium, right? Now you do this across, say 200 units. You can really build a lot of value. And the biggest thing for retail investors or the everyday investor like us, Gary, is, commercial real estate is valued upon a multiple of the income that it produces, right? So everything is governed by what's called the net operating income. Mm-hmm. So, you can actually just really play this out over a spreadsheet with, conservative assumptions in different parts of the market cycle, with the right debt, right? The right market, the right debt. We're always looking for population growth, job growth, household formation. We're looking at, area income, sub-market income. There's a lot of metrics that go into what we buy. And then we'll just, a lot of these things trade every 3 to say 10 years. There's a life cycle for these. Groups take it, they make it better, they make their money, they move on. The next group picks it up, they take it, they make it a little nicer, do a little value add, make their money, and they move on, right? So that's basically what we do. We do that with multifamily. We do it with self-storage units. A surprising statistic about self-storage, Gary, is that about 70% of the self-storage units in our country are owned by, families or what we call mom and pop operators, mm-hmm. with maybe not a lot of systems and processes and technology into that. And 30% are the big boxes, right, that are owned by the REITs and the institutional players. So there's a lot of opportunity in self-storage. And there's also, it's a very recession resistant asset class. I'll put it that way, because, when you're only paying $79 or $109 a month for basically your life's possessions in a box, and the rents go up by 10%, say another $8 or $10 a month, it's not something that's going to break the bank.
Right.
You're not going to take the time and effort to go through those things, right, and throw them out. It just kind of is sticky. But occasionally, people don't pay, and we give them plenty of notice and say a couple months later, we can just cut the lock, we auction off or sell the stuff in their unit, and we broom sweep it, and now it's ready to go again. Yeah. But the way we add value in self-storage is by providing, boxes, moving tape, dollies, U-Haul rentals. We also look for a footprint that maybe if they have an acre or two of extra land, and we can squeeze another 10,000 feet of new construction and add on to the existing. Maybe we put climate control. Maybe we do RV and boat storage, depending on the area. There's all these different ways to grow the net operating income and to provide a clean, safe, affordable, product to consumers. Mm-hmm. And that just serves our investors.
Awesome. Okay. So now, as far as an individual participating in one of the bigger projects, what's their role? Like I guess they can be equity partners, they can be strictly lenders. They can say, here's $50,000, and just I get a certain return on this. Or is there a combination of ways that they can participate in these?
Yeah, so our broker-dealer is 100% equity focused. There are BDs out there, broker-dealers that have debt funds, right? So they might do bridge lending, or they might do, there's a certain coupon for, distressed assets, distressed credit, fix and flips, stuff like that. I mean, we don't do that, at least not yet. So when an investor, just call it, Gary is the investor and he wants to put $100,000 to work. So he likes multifamily in Arizona, Texas, and Florida. And I have an opportunity, 3 opportunities for him to look at. Gary and I would have a conversation about his goals, what he's looking to do with his money, what his financial situation is, whether he's accredited or non-accredited. And I can jump into that if you need me to. Mm-hmm. And then he'd look at the 3 deals and their return metrics and what they're doing and what the business plan is, and say he chose the one in Florida. Cool. Mm-hmm. I would take his reservation for $100,000. We would send him what's called subscription documents, which are the PPM, or the private placement memorandum, the subscription documentation for banking purposes, and the operating agreement of the LLC that is purchasing the property. And you would sign those, and you would wire your money to the operating account. And then every month, Gary would get a monthly update of the property with the financials, before and after pictures of any kind of renovations, occupancy numbers, vacancy numbers, good debt, bad debt, debt collected, all the things. And then that's how Gary participates in real estate. So he would get also monthly or quarterly what we call a distribution, not a dividend, because this is not a REIT. This is direct participation in the property.
Mhm.
You would get a distribution from the cash flow that's ACH into your account. And at the end of the year, you would get a K-1 statement, which is a tax form that shows your accountant your income and losses. And a lot of times your losses far exceed your income,
Mhm.
which, depending on your tax situation, can lead to either tax deferred income or, in some cases, tax-free income. But yeah, that's basically how it works. And these are usually 3 to 6 year hold periods,
Okay.
where we like to execute this business plan, drive the NOI, pay investors along the way. And then upon a refinance or a sale, what we call a capital event, let's walk through that. Say 5 years later, Gary, you've been getting your monthly distributions, and then 5 years comes up. We're done with this thing. We cash flowed it. We are ready now to sell it.
Mhm.
We sell it. This is the way it gets unwound.
Okay.
You, the investor, gets your $100,000 back, right? So
Okay.
your original capital comes back to you. Now there's usually a 70-30 split. 70% of the profits go to you, the investor. 30% go to what's called the general partner or the GP team.
Okay.
And if there was a preferred return, and I can go into what a preferred return is, but if there was a preferred return on the deal and you, the investor, didn't hit that preferred return each year, there'd also be a provision that we catch you up on your preferred return.
Gotcha.
So then now you got your preferred return, your 70-30 split, and you get your original capital back. And that's important because people don't always realize that you get your original back. It's just like if you put $100,000 into a duplex and you sold it, right? You'd want your original back and then the upside on top of that.
Yeah. So it's just like in the when you buy stocks, you can get preferred participating stock ownership, and you generally get paid first. And in terms of the real estate, if you wouldn't mind touching on that a little bit, is it the people who put in, maybe 500,000 versus 100,000, or is it how's that determined, I guess?
Yeah, so there's different share classes in some deals, right? So let me take one of our biggest providers works out of Phoenix and Dallas, and they'll do 3 share classes. The first share class is called Class A, and that's a 10% coupon on your capital. So say you invest 100,000, you would get whatever that is. I hate public math, Gary, but I think it's $816.67 a month, right? If that adds up to 10,000 by the end of the year, I did well on my public math.
Yeah.
So 10,000 a year, but then when we sell, you get your 100,000 back, but you don't get any upside. There's no participation on the upside. So it's really more of like a cash flow play. My dad's 72, and that's what he likes. He likes the cash flow. He always tells me he's not in capital appreciation mode. He's in capital preservation mode. So, and then Class B has what's called a 7% preferred return. And obviously, since I'm a broker dealer, I have to tell you, nothing's guaranteed in life, right? I'm not making any offers right now. That's just to satisfy my compliance officer. But this particular operator I'm thinking about has a 7% preferred return. But in value add real estate, a lot of times that preferred return doesn't get hit in years, say 1 and 2, right? It's a very capital intensive program to renovate the units, get everything online, implement the business plan. So say in year 1, you only get 4%. Well, that's not 7% of your preferred return. So now we owe you 3. Say in year 4, the same thing happens. We only pay you 4%. And again, we owe you 3. So now we owe you a total of 6% on your capital over those 2 years. Now, Gary, let's just say we sell that property at the end of 2 years. This is the way it would work. We would sell the property. We would give you your original $100,000 back. Then we would pay you your 6% pref that we owe you from the first 2 years that we didn't pay you that preferred return.
Okay.
Then we'd split it 70-30. And that's how that works. Gotcha. And then sometimes there's a Class C share class. If you have $500,000 or more, instead of having that 70-30 split, you can get an 80-20 split on the back end. So your money is worth a little bit more on the back end.
Okay.
So generally speaking, obviously every deal is a little bit different, but that's what I work with my clients over, and I always tell them, don't invest in my first deal or my first 2 deals or 3 deals. Let's go over them on a Zoom call. I want to make sure you know what you're looking at, what this deal is all about. And then after the second or third one, you feel comfortable, you watch the webinars, you understand what we're doing here. Then I feel good and the investor feels good as well.
Okay. All right. Well, this sounds pretty cool. And I hope everybody listening here is taking notes. I mean, so anybody that wants to participate in one of these, it's not like you're just doing this in New York. You can participate, or they can participate in projects in it sounds like a number of states, and the ones you mentioned, of course, the ones that are the high growth states right now. So
yeah, I mean, we're in a lot of Arizona, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia. We have a Midwest partner, two Midwest partners, Michigan and Ohio. So we generally want to be in like landlord friendly states, business friendly states. Generally speaking, yep.
Yeah, I know. I'm biting my tongue because I know some of the states that are not business friendly. I don't want to alienate people and find myself, somebody knocking on my door. Hey, heard you say something.
That's right. Business friendly states. That's how we're going to leave that one.
That's it's just the way it should be. So okay, so I know we're getting close on time here. That explanation really helps a lot, Tim. And I've had other people on the show with programs like this, but the way you went about it, I mean, I'm personally interested. So anybody listening here, I might do this maybe twice a year, but this was a personal, I don't know what you would call it, a recommendation. But again, I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. Just me, Gary Wilson, personally is going to be looking at this in the next month or two and participating. So if you want to join along, Tim, how can people find out what you have currently going on in the way of projects? How can they reach you and have conversations, things like that?
Yeah, the best way is to send me an email at tim@citysidecap.com. Just tell me that you heard me on Gary, you heard me on Gary's show and you want to be added to our list. You can also go to our website. We have a free download about, some of this stuff. You can just enter in your email address there. Or just give me a call on my cell phone, 516-521-7762. I do apologize if my 4-year-old answers the phone every once in a while. That does happen. But I mean, I'm happy to chat because, this is something, what I found in real estate, Gary, is that people are willing to help, right? I sleep very well at night. My investors, hopefully they sleep well at night. I mean, I get a lot of good phone calls because at the end of the day, this is a team sport and, there's just different ways to do things. And when you're working with people that like, and trust, it just makes a difference. So, that's what I got.
Well, I like the fact that you're not only in the right areas, you're in the right asset classes, and from what I gather, it's not like you're saying yes to every opportunity. It's very, very strict guidelines, and that's why you're successful. So everybody, again, I'm going to repeat this. It's tim@citysidecap.com. Okay. And your brave soul, I did this too, by the way. My cell phone is actually publicly available, and but it works. It's area code 516. This is Tim's, by the way, 516-521-7762. And so obviously the website is citysidecap.com. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Everybody take advantage of that. And while you're out there looking at citysidecap.com, please leave a review for this podcast, because this was a big, huge win for those of you out there that you're not at retirement, but maybe you are, maybe you're looking at the next 5 or 10 years. And, what do you do to keep bringing in some good returns and not have to worry about the 2:00 in the morning phone calls? By the way, I have to say this jokingly. All the years I've been in real estate, owning hundreds of properties and thousands of tenants, I never ever got up at 2 a.m. It's just people say that because it's a fear thing.
I hear it every time. Every time I talk to a new investor, Gary, I hear about the 2 a.m. phone call. And I'm like, man, I don't get those. And right now, the way I do real estate is the property management people get it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I still sleep well at night.
Exactly.
And Gary, I want to stack on top of one thing just real quick is, people also get confused about what I do. You can do it in cash. You can do it through what's called a self-directed IRA or a solo 401k. And you could also do 1031 exchanges. And we didn't touch on that today, but if you have I'd say $1 million or more in a 1031 exchange, I'd be happy to chat with you as well, because there are opportunities to come in as a tenant in common. So there's multiple ways, trusts, entities, all that stuff. So any questions, even if you're not going to invest with me per se, I still, I'll point you in the right direction or connect you with somebody in my network.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that things. I did have it written down, but I was looking, my one left eye is on my notes, right eye is on the clock. So people remember this was kind of a big deal. I mean, I've taught 1031 exchange, and I can tell you, you may want to look at trust. Again, I'm not an accountant, not an attorney, but talk to Tim about using trust. It's a great way to secure your ownership in a number of ways. It's just a great way to do business. Great for you, great for your family, and great for your money. So, in any case, so check it out, Tim at citysidecap.com. Please go to Apple, however you're listening to this, and leave a review. We really do appreciate it, guys. It's a big ask of you. It takes a minute to do it, but it's really what makes the podcast world go around. And before you leave the website, go to globalinvestoragent.com. Check that out. There's resources you can get. And we give everything away for free in the beginning. There's nothing, no strings attached. What we're looking for are relationships. When a relationship's there, you've got a lifetime of profit for everybody. That's how we do our business. Nobody pays me a dime up front for anything. So check it out, and we'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.